my name is Tom Stiles, and this is Tom's Rear Room Show, and I have started yet another hobby. Yeah, people used to ask me when I retired, what do you do now that you don't have to work? Are you bored or what? I says, no. All those hobbies that I wasn't able to get to while I was working, I am now doing those hobbies. And they said, well, like what? And I told them a couple of things, and they said, well, that shouldn't take up much time. And I says, well, I've got a lot of hobbies. And so I decided that I would actually sit down and make a list of my hobbies. Now, granted, 70–80% of the hobbies are kind of on hold, and I just get to them from time to time. So I only have really 3 or 4 active hobbies, but I have a total of 16 hobbies. Yes, 16 hobbies. And now I've added another one, so I have 70. And this is something that I've been interested in for quite a while. It's fascinated me, and I just didn't have time to get to it, and I got a little shove by one of my fellow YouTubers who did a couple of videos on this particular device, and that kind of really sparked my interest. And then another subscriber actually gave me a credit on Amazon to buy one of these devices so that I could get into it and make it of interest to other people. So here is a new hobby, and it's not marbles, which there's a bag of marbles you're seeing right now, and I'll tell you why that is. So let me give you a little history, taking you back a couple of weeks. A couple of weeks ago, I had some minor surgery, and I got this device, which will be shown in a few minutes, and I really didn't do anything with it because I didn't have any place to work on it. Now, the reason I didn't have any place to work on it is my workshop was already overflowing with stuff, with my radios, with computers, because one of my hobbies is I take old computers that people give me that they no longer want or don't work or whatever, and I try to repair them, and then I give them away to people who can't either afford to get their computer repaired or can't afford to have their own computers. For instance, in this area, you can go to the library and use the library computers. And then I just, I fix them up and I give them away. I don't do it for money. I did that many years ago, and it just got to be a headache, so I don't do it for money anymore, just for a hobby. So anyway, what happened was one of the people found out about what I do, and he had been, or is, in the computer repair business kind of on the side, and he has another job, plus he's now going back to school. So he sent me an email and he says, I've got all these old computers that are leftovers from my repairs, and I'm getting ready to throw them out. Do you want them? And I said, sure, I want them. I figured he had maybe half a dozen computers. Well, he had about 40 computers, desktops, laptops, netbooks, you name it. All of them needed some kind of repair. So I quickly, even though I was still recovering, I quickly went over to his house and made 3 trips with my Ford Explorer SUV and got all these computers in my workshop, which left no room whatsoever. Matter of fact, the last load I had to leave in my Explorer because I couldn't get it in my workshop. So I have spent over a week going through those computers and weeding out the ones that were just basically chassis and a motherboard, and getting rid of those because I just did not have that kind of room. And I was able to clear those out and neatly stack them up so that I got about 1/3 of my workshop back. And the driving factor was this new hobby. I wanted room in my workshop to experiment with this new hobby. So the new hobby is, and I'll just show you briefly because, and I'll tell you why I can only show you briefly, is right here, and it's a Raspberry Pi microcomputer. It's actually a computer. You can look on the internet. This has been around for a while. This is a new version they came out with this year, which gives you a faster processor and 4 times the amount of memory. So the processor is running at 900 megahertz. Now, granted, this is just a microcomputer, and it has 1 gig of memory on board. It also has 4 USB interfaces, and it has an HDMI output, and it has a multi-output here, which is video, audio out, audio in, which requires a special cable. And the Raspberry Pi itself comes just as the card, just a bare card that you see down inside this plastic case. And what I opted to do to save some time is I ordered a kit, and there's many of these kits. And what the kit consists of is the Raspberry Pi, the case, the plastic case, the HDMI cable that goes to your monitor, and a little USB wireless network adapter, and a power supply, a little wall wart power supply. So that's what comes in the case. Cost about $68. Now, let me put this back on here, and the reason I've got this on here is so it doesn't slide off on the floor again. It's already done that once. Okay. So what I got my workshop all cleaned up, and I had a nice big area to work. I had a monitor that I had repaired that I thought had HDMI. Unfortunately, it did not. So I had taken, this morning, I took all this stuff that came in 2 boxes downstairs to my workshop. The first thing I attempted to do is hook up the HDMI output to my monitor I had in my workshop. Well, I guess I must have dreamed it, because it doesn't have an HDMI output. So that didn't work out at all. So I've had this kit for about 10 days, and I hadn't turned it on. And I needed to get it turned on and see if everything's working. Otherwise, my return period would have expired. So I gathered up everything, brought it back upstairs, kind of pushed some things aside, and that's why it's all kind of messy. It's actually sitting on top of a laptop. Hooked up the cables, and all this just temporarily to see if it works. Hooked it to my TV up here, which has an HDMI monitor, HDMI input, and proceeded, hooked up I have a USB keyboard and a USB mouse, and the wireless internet dongle, it was plugged in. I plugged in the power with my TV on HDMI 1 of 2 inputs. Nothing. The lights blinked on the board. There's 2 LEDs on the board. They blinked, but I got nothing on the screen, the monitor. Nothing. And I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Well, I had one problem when I was putting the card in that little plastic case, in that I couldn't get it to go in initially, and I was pushing on the card, and it turned out that the other thing it comes with is a SD card, which is where you store the operating system initially, and then it gets downloaded from there. So I couldn't get the card to go in the case because that SD card was sticking out a little bit. So then I realized, oh, I have to pull it back and shove it down in there a certain way so that it would clear, and then the SD card would stick outside the case so that you could insert it and remove it without having to take the case off. So I was concerned, since I wasn't getting anything on the screen, that I had cracked that SD card trying to get the board in the case. So I took the SD card out, and it came with an adapter so that you got it. That's a mini or a micro. It's a micro SD card, so that you can plug it into this adapter, which most computers, if they have an SD slot, will have the bigger SD slot. So, oh my gosh.
The outdoor temperature is 71.7 degrees Fahrenheit.
Thank you for the weather report. Boy, it cooled off today, down in the 60s. So I thought I had, cracked that SD card, and so I was going to put it in my laptop to see if I could read it. And as I was inserting it in the adapter, I noticed the monitor was saying HDMI 1. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's got 2 HDMI ports. Maybe I put the cable in HDMI 2. So I put everything back together on the Raspberry Pi, selected HDMI 2 on my monitor, plugged in the power to the card, and voila, it came up. So it is now working. I'm not showing you it working right now because I've got to clean off this desk because I'm going to have to use my TV monitor, which it's too big. It's like a 28-inch monitor. It'd be too big for my workshop. So I have to do my experimenting up here in my office. So that means I need to clear off some stuff to make room for this, and to make it so that it's more permanently, not permanently, but more permanently tied down. Because what happened in my initial testing is I got so excited when the display came to life and showed the Raspberry Pi that I pulled the card in the case onto the floor via the keyboard cable. So I grabbed my little bag of marbles, which I use quite often to hold things in place temporarily, and put that on top of the Raspberry Pi so it was less likely to fall off again, because I was lucky the first time. And then I booted it up to see if it was working. It was working, so I didn't have to worry about sending it back. So everything seems to be working. What I will be doing, like I said, is I'll be rearranging things on this desk so that I can get the Raspberry Pi more stable so it won't fall on the floor again, and then I'll do some more videos and start my experimenting. So that's kind of where we are at right now. What I'd like to do is get this over here on the desk someplace. I'll probably remove that scanner. I can find other places for that scanner. Let me just kind of show you where I have to work with. There's a bunch of radios that can be moved. There's the scanner can be moved, so I can make some room here and somehow try to maybe use double-sided sticky tape or something and get this Raspberry Pi a little more stable so that it so it doesn't slide off the desk again. So that's where I'm at. now comes the question for my viewers. Oh, one other thing is the Raspberry Pi board itself does not have an on-off switch. The adapter that came with it does not have an on-off switch. So that's another little project I've got to come up with of some way of turning it on and off easily. Maybe I'll get a small power strip, you know, maybe one with 4 outlets or something that has a switch on it, power it that way. So here comes the question for my viewers is, I'm trying to figure out whether to do these videos, if there's any interest, and include them in my Tom's Radio Room show, or to set up a new channel about the Raspberry Pi. So I'm looking for your input to either A, include it in the existing shows, or B, start a new channel. I don't know how far I'll get with my experimenting, but we'll see. So I'm kind of leaning towards just including it in my radio room shows for now, and see how much interest I get, and if it catches on, and if I want to do more shows. So that's my my question to my viewers. Please send me a comment or send me an email to trrs73@gmail.com. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We're almost to 4,000 subscribers, and we're going to have a giveaway when we get to 4,000 subscribers. If you enjoyed this show, please give me a thumbs up. That gives you another indication whether you're interested in the Raspberry Pi or not. So thanks for watching. Bye-bye.